Well, once again, it's a good morning from Radio FM 88 Australia in the studios here at Brisbane. It's simulcast, and we're going through Facebook, YouTube, X as Radio FM 88 Australia. If I might be so bold to say, I'm going to hand it straight across to our co-host. Right at the very top of the totem pole is Elisa, and she's all the way from Cape Canaveral, Florida. Good morning to you, but it's a good evening to you.
Good morning, good evening, everybody. Always grateful and honored to be in your presence. Thank you for being here. And today I'm very excited to have Christopher Jones, or for short, Chris Jones, with us today. This is going to be an amazing story. I really hope that you hang in there because it's going to be a lot of information. And Chris has an amazing story of awakening, as well as his book and how his book came to be. So Chris, welcome to the show. As always, and as you know, I would love you to tell us, how you got here to this place where you're at right now, and how is your spiritual journey and all that good stuff. So welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I guess we're talking to a worldwide audience, so wherever you're at, I hope you're happy and well. My name's Chris Jones. Christopher Jones is kind of my pen name. I'm kind of a mainstreamer, so I kind of came at this differently than most, I guess. I did 26 years in the U.S. military. Started off in the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy, which is kind of unique in and of itself. But as a kid, I guess I experienced some channeling, some interaction with other entities, and I kind of suppressed it because I was kind of made fun of or ridiculed or whatnot. I think I had like a near-death experience when I was like 8 years old, where I ended up. I used to love to take hot showers, and I took this real hot shower, and I didn't dry off afterwards. I'd come out of the hot shower, and I'd kind of lay on the bed. And this one time this happened, I kind of passed out and went somewhere. I call it falling up because I didn't really understand at the time, but I felt like I was falling. But then I ended up popping out of like a pool area, surrounded by all these orbs. And I felt so euphoric just being in the space with these entities. And it was amazing. And I didn't want to leave. And they're telling me, hey, it's not your time. You got to go back. And I'm like, no. I want to stay. So it was amazing. And I didn't really understand that. Again, I haven't told a lot of people that. Even in my book, I wrote this book, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But this is the kind of the book. It's called Veilwalker. It's kind of about healing yourself, humanity, and the cosmos. I did 26 years in the military, and when I left the service, they pretty much said that I had severe PTSD. And for me, it wasn't one single event, so it was kind of hard to talk about. But at some point, just over the 26 years, my fight or flight just stopped naturally turning off on me. And the VA wanted to put me on some hardcore pharmaceuticals, and I kind of said, no, thank you. I'll find another solution. And I really didn't know what that solution was initially. But I went down to Peru, actually, and hiked from Cusco to Machu Picchu and met a bunch of New Agers, people that I would probably never hung out with in my military career. It took several months. I had some time between jobs and kind of changed my life. And during my trip in Peru, it was kind of revealed to me that I should look into flotation therapy. Again, I had this natural experience as a kid, but I don't think I'm a natural. I wasn't natural. I kind of suppressed it. So it didn't come naturally. So I need tools. And so for me, flotation therapy has kind of been an amazing tool to kind of take me out and kind of let me see beyond the veil. And I did a 30-day float challenge where I floated every day straight for at least an hour for 30 days. And towards the end of the 30 days, my intuition was off the charts. And my spirit guides were coming through very, very clearly and basically saying that I should write a book. Of course, they didn't give me a topic. They just said that I should write another book and, help the world awaken. And at first I kind of foo-fooed them and said, oh, no, that's too hard. I did write another book called Floatosophy when I first got into floating, which was kind of geared towards how to get the most out of your flotation experience. But that was, not very deep. It's a lot of pictures, a lot of, big words or small words, big font. It's again, just to help people get the most out of their float thing. But it was hard. And for me, the hard part of it was the formatting. The text and the content came out easy. But I wrote it during COVID, so I had time to kind of go in and deal with it. So that was my biggest thing here. Is like, oh, it's too hard to write a book. I'm not going to do one. So anyway, I kind of thought my spirit guides were crazy. And then I went home after my 30 days of floating, and I had like 3 days off where I really wanted to float, but I was like, no, I'm going to resist. And then this idea for Veilwalker kind of popped in my head, and it's really how to help people interdimensional travel. Now, I hate to put labels on things. There's lots of terms for it, astral projection, interdimensional travel, obviously, out-of-body experiences. They're all kind of lumped in the same, but it's basically, in my opinion, leaving this 3D world that we live in and going elsewhere. Of course, 5D is kind of the closest boundary that you're going to hit. And so this book is designed to give people tips, tools, tricks, techniques on how to make that happen on a consistent basis. Since when I told you my first experience was more of an NDE, I think, near-death experience. But when I was in Peru, I was taken on a journey. And basically on that journey, my guides took me right to the collective consciousness, or the Shamanic records. And I sat in front of them, and they're like, ask anything you want. You'll get the answer. And I was in such awe of just being there. I was like, nope, I'm good. I don't need to know anything more. And then I left after that experience, and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I in my mind, I really wanted to see, like the crucifixion of Christ or something like that, which something very 3D is where my mind would have taken me. But again, at the time I said, no, thank you. I'm good. And so that got me thinking. And my first one actually happened by accident in a float tank. I tell everybody, as you float, the deeper you go, I almost feel like you're spinning or falling. I told you as a kid, I felt like I was falling up. But you start to spin or fall, and then you feel your ego step in and say, oh, no, I don't want you to leave. And most people kind of jar themselves back to sleep and or awake and don't let them continue with the experience. But and this happened to me a few times before I was finally brave enough to say, hey, I'm going to follow this through. And I just kind of popped out, and I ended up somewhere in the universe, and it was amazing. And that kind of started my journey, at least intellectually, thinking about all of this. I hired for the Australian audience. I hired an Australian couple. Their name is Pete and Roxy. I paid them to take me on a formal med bed journey. And it was amazing. We went up and visited the Galactic Federation and did a med bed, and it wasn't so much about healing for me. It was more about reuniting with friends and people on the other side. So between all these experiences kind of convinced me that all this stuff is real. And like I said, I don't think I said it in the beginning, but when I was in the military, I was kind of a naysayer. I would have probably been the one to have rolled my eyes at somebody who said this and said, I don't believe it. So my second life, again, I started through floating. I own 2 float centers now, one outside of Washington, D.C., called Synergy Float Center. That was my first one. As soon as I started to get into it, that's the one I opened. And then now I've reopened a second one down in Florida on the Space Coast, where I've met our host. It's my goal in life. People find floating for various reasons. Some do it for aches and pains, some do it for performance, and others do it for spiritual things. That's kind of the beauty of floating, I think. The universe kind of gives you what you need, and you're probably not going to have an spiritual experience on your first couple times. But once you get comfortable enough and open everything up, then stuff's going to start to happen to you. And you'll be like me and be like, who was I just talking to? Or where did I just go? And it's kind of weird things like that. So, but hey, if you're in it just for the performance, that's good too. At the end of the day, I think floating makes us all better human beings, and it raises our vibration. And so it's my belief, and that's kind of the theme of my book is remembrance, that we've all had this innate ability to interdimensionally travel. And the goal of all of us is to kind of raise the Earth's collective vibration, so we can, make it out of the 3D realm, which is based on, in simplicity. I call it 3 terms, but it's based on fear, scarcity, and separation, right? And make it up to the 5D realm based on love, oneness, and abundance. So wouldn't that be beautiful if we can all experience those 3 things? So
yeah. Absolutely. How old were you when you had this falling up experience?
I think I was about 8 years old. Like I said, I didn't really understand it, and I didn't want to come back. I would have stayed there for all of eternity, because I felt so euphoric just being in that space around those entities. I was like, oh, this must be what heaven is. But yeah, I was like 8 years old. But like I said, I never really told a lot of people about it, and I didn't even mention it in my book when I kind of led into how I got into all of this.
Okay. And when you had the experience with, oh my God, the Australian couple, was that, was plant medicine used for that, or was it just hypnosis?
It was complete hypnosis or meditation. I just laid down in a quiet space and brought Pete up on. He was on the phone on FaceTime, so if I looked at the phone, I could see him. But he said, "Hey, just put it down. He just really needed to hear my voice." In Peru, it was on plant medicine, so I needed kind of extra help. And again, the other times were in a float tank, so I kind of needed that extra boost. But Pete was able to do it naturally in the comfort of my own home here in Florida, right in my bedroom. So, like I said, there's multiple ways to do this, and if you have the right guides and right tools, and if it's meant to be, you're gonna get there. My book, I went in and did a bunch of research. So once I started writing the book, it was almost, there was stuff coming out in there that I didn't really consciously knew that I knew, I guess. And so I wrote for like 3 days straight, taking little breaks here to sleep, but I was really worried I would lose whatever I was channeling. But we talk about, I break out chapters. So if you wanted to actually do a med bed thing, I have a script, to connect with the Galactic Federation and do a medbed thing. Another journey I went on that I didn't mention before was I did a past life regression in a float tank. And I'd done those before early on outside of a float tank in just a typical environment. And I felt a little bit of connection, but not a lot. I realized that I don't do subtle very well. I need somebody to punch me in the face, and I need to realize what it is legit. And that's kind of why I like floating, because to me, it's not subtle. But when I did a past life regression in a float tank, that wasn't subtle either. It was like a movie was playing in my head. And even though I was revealed parts of past lives that I'd lived before, again, it was so visual in my head that triggered me. In my other past lives, I just get mad and pissed at everybody that kind of wronged me. But in this latest one, Jessica Bird, who did it for me here in Florida, and again, it was in a float tank, which is kind of another unique thing. Most people don't do hypnosis in a float tank, but she hypnotized me in a float tank, and this time around, like I said, maybe it was because I had seen it before, I'd feel it before. Instead of getting mad, I just kind of forgave everybody that wronged me. And at the very end of my journey, I felt all my guides were around me, and they were kind of applauding and clapping. That healing, forgiveness is kind of the critical thing, how to move on and get over this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Peru, so one of the things I wanted to ask you when you were talking about Peru was, so you did plant medicine there, but you said the flotation thing came from Peru. So did you go to a floating tank in Peru, or the idea of going to a floating tank came to you?
Yeah, at the time, and I don't know, I know float tanks are all over the world, so I don't know if they have one in Peru proper. I think I did hear that there was a center in Cusco, but yeah, it was the idea. I mean, and I didn't even know what floating was prior to Peru. So it was after my plant medicine, the next day we're all talking about our journey and whatnot. And again, I was there with a bunch of new agers that kind of done this stuff on the regular, were more informed than I was. And I said, hey, Mother Ayahuasca kind of told me about this floating thing. What is that? And they explained to me what it was. And it was actually the first thing I did when I went back to the States. I came back to the States and I found a float center. It was actually called Hope Floats in Bethesda, Maryland. I visited there, and I was working at the Pentagon at the time when I went to Hope Floats. And I remember I did a normal work day, and I left at my 5 p.m. time. And for those of you who've been to the DC area, traffic is terrible, even though Bethesda is only, maybe 10 minutes away. It took me almost an hour to get there, and I was so frustrated and mad, and the place didn't have parking, so I had to circle around a while.
Oh, God.
And I basically, I'm walking in the place, and I'm telling myself that I'm just throwing good money away for bad, but I've made this appointment. I'm going to go ahead and do it. And it was night and day. I mean, like I said, I don't do subtle. It was like somebody punched me in the face. I came out of my float, and I was like, oh, oh my, this must be what it feels like to have your nervous system, fully shut off. Like I said, my fight or flight was kind of stuck on, and I'd never been in that rest and relaxation space in a while. So it was amazing. I remember driving there, people cut me off of the road, and I'm yelling at them and getting mad and flipping them the bird. And after my float, I'm still in rush hour, but I'm driving home, and I lived in Old Town Alexandria, which is also where my float center is up there. And same other people are cutting me off, and normally stuff that would trigger me. And instead of getting triggered, I started thinking about the person that just, did something on the road, cut me off. And I'm like, they're obviously a distracted driver. They probably got something bad going on in their life, going through a divorce or a sick kid or losing their job. And so I'm going to cut them some slack and, wish them some love and light and help them get through it. And hopefully they don't kill somebody on the road. And I'm like, and after I did that a couple of times, I'm like, wait a second, driving here, I was giving them the burden, hoping that they would, meet a quick demise. And so it changed my whole perspective on life. So, like I said, I think floating is the greatest therapy that nobody's ever heard of. It just makes us all better human beings, whether you're looking for spiritual or just, you go to the grocery store and just being more humane to your neighbors and your community and not getting so worked up over the little things that don't matter. I think a float lasts for about 72 hours for me. Is kind of what I find for most of my clients too. So I started floating at that point, like every 3 days. It's kind of affordable too. Most float centers have memberships and reduced prices. I do an unlimited float at my place for $600 a month. I think $599 is what we do it for. And so you could do a 30-day float challenge yourself for less than $20 a day.
So, Chris, can you explain to people what is floating? Like they get it; it has to do with water, but give the details of what it is.
So he's kind of scrolling through everything that we offer there. But if you go to that first picture on the top is a float tank. That one we have pictured looks like a big clamshell. But basically you get in it, and it has about 1,500 pounds of Epsom salt, depending on the size of the tank, 1,000 or 1,500. We basically bring water to its saturation point that if you dropped a bowling ball on there, it would float. So it's like 10 times saltier in the ocean. So you don't have to worry about drowning or anything else. But most float centers also do soundproofing in all the rooms, and all the rooms go completely dark. So if done properly, we take away all your humanly senses, including gravity, through the floating, and the water's heated to your body's skin temperature, and your body just kind of physically disappears, and you just feel like what it feels like to be alive without a body. And to me, that's where the magic happens. Because when you don't have this 3D world and this 3D body that we're, living in this 3D world with, it kind of helps you automatically elevate to that 5D level and higher. And, you'll get in a float tank, you have 100 problems going on in your life, and then you come out of the float tank and maybe you've got 2 or 3, right? And those 2 or 3 are mostly the profound things of, am I truly happy in life, or am I with the right person? Am I in the right location, in the right job? It's those big questions that we've all kind of faced, and you'll get clarity in a float tank, but all that little low level stuff just kind of fades away during a float for me. And like I said, there's other aspects as well. If you've got aches and pains, I'm 55 years old. I don't know if you remember the picture that they started with, but now I've got a little gray up here. So I'm a little older. I got some more weight on me. So aches and pains come as we get older, and floating clears up all those too. So you're a better human being on the physical side. Yeah, there's me a little bit younger. There was one picture that I actually showed with my dog, was even younger than that. And like I said, the spiritual side sneaks up on you. Nobody's going to tell you, at least if you're in the right float center, that they're not going to tell you what to believe, but you're just going to be in a tank. And I remember I had one experience. I'm floating and I get very comfortable and I drift off, and I know it's going to sound awful boring, but I'm sitting here, I'm putting this puzzle together with like my best friend. And I just feel euphoric. We're having the greatest time. We're cracking jokes and talking about all these things. And every once in a while, I'll hold up a piece of the puzzle and say, you see where this fits? And then we talk about it. And then 20 minutes into this thing, I asked myself, I'm like, wait a second, who am I talking to? I don't have a best friend that I'm this tight with. And it was Source. It was God. I was talking to God or Jesus or whomever you want it to be. And it wasn't a God that I was brought up that would condemn me and hate me and yell at me for doing bad stuff. He was a God that would unconditionally love me no matter what. Some of these pieces I was raising, and that's the other part of this thing. Turns out this puzzle, which started off in my mind like 200 pieces, each piece was like an experience in my life or something I'd done. And so I'd hold up a piece and kind of relive the experience as I was holding the piece. And sometimes Source would tell me, does that piece even belong in this puzzle? And I'd think about it and say, no, maybe you're right. And I kind of throw it away. And what started off as like a 200-piece puzzle ended up being like a 12-piece puzzle when it was all said and done. So I know there's multiple messages at that level, but I just couldn't believe that I was hanging out with Source or God or Jesus, and they weren't yelling at me for being a bad person and all the sins I'd done. They're like, I'm going to love you regardless, right? A little disappointed in you for some of this stuff, but hey, that's part of being human. That's part of living the 3D experience. So that's really what started my whole trajectory of changing the way that I thought about, religion and society and what they teach. So, I call myself spiritual because I definitely believe in God and Source, but I think it's a kind of a personal experience for everybody, and you'll find it when you know it, and you'll know it's true when you find it.
Yeah, absolutely. And David Pace was asking, does the float tank have salt in the water?
Yes. Yeah, it's about 1,500 pounds, 1,000 to 1,500 pounds in the water. The salt is actually really good for your skin too. It's Epsom salt. It's really like an Epsom salt bath on steroids. But and of course, I don't really care. I put these beauty bars in my spaces so that people can do their hair and makeup afterwards. But most people come out of a float and they're feeling so good on the inside, and they realize how unimportant the outside is that they don't even spend any time in my beauty bars. But yeah, it's good for your skin. It's good for your hair. It's like I said, the worst thing that I've heard about floating is you're going to get salt in your ears, and a lot of float centers will give you earplugs that you can prevent that. And to me, the salt is kind of healthy. My float centers, we put give you some vinegar and some Q-tips that you can clear the salt out. I don't wear the earplugs. Again, I've got good soundproofing in my place. I'm on the Space Coast of Florida, and we even get rocket launches down here. And you may feel the vibration in the water of the rocket launch, but you're not going to hear the launch proper because we've soundproofed it so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been there, and for me, I'm getting used to it, and every time it gets better and better. The last time I was just so peaceful, and I felt like not having your body get hit with gravity, like that, that alone was just like so that like you say, it's like a nervous system reset.
Right.
It's really delicious. But if you guys have tried it and didn't like it, give it a chance, because that was me. I had tried it a couple of times and just was like, meh. I'm telling you, it's worth going back to, because as you get used to it, it's just amazing, and I have a friend who also did the 30-day float. Now she's doing it another 30 days. So same thing, she's connected like crazy. She gets messages every time. Now the messages she gets are aligning her life, and do this, do that, it would be a good idea for this or that, or she's going back in time to heal a lot of her past traumas. So it's just amazing.
Yeah, well, that's what a lot of people don't, they don't believe in past life regressions or anything. That they're like, hey, I've lived kind of a normal mundane life. Why do I have all this, trauma or background noise that, is keeping me from being happy and healthy? And yeah, it's a lot of past life stuff. And unless you're starting to do some plant medicines or some other things, to me, floating is, again, the greatest therapy nobody's ever heard of. It's an hour out of your day, but it'll, get you on track. And to your point, and I'm not a doctor, so I don't understand all the physiology behind everything, but I think it takes about the average person about 3 times to truly get comfortable in the float tank. First time you get in, you'll be like, oh, this is weird. I feel weird. Am I doing it right? For the audience, there's no right or wrong way to float. Do whatever feels natural. We're all kind of floating in our mother's wombs before we came into this earth. So it's like really towards the end of your first hour, you're like, oh, there's that piece I was thinking about. This must be what everybody likes. And then it's over, and you're like, oh, next time you'll come back, you get a little bit longer in the piece. And by the third time, it's kind of a charm. And again, a good float center is going to talk you through all of that and offer a discounted special to get you into and out of it for 3 times. I think in mine, we offer to you for $150 for 3 of them. So it's like $50 a float to get you in and get you out, and you can't even get one massage for an hour for that price, in our town. So And then again, if you're going to do it on the regular after, most float centers offer memberships that'll discount it for you, and you can do it frequently. When I first got into it, it's not on the market anymore, but it was called a Zen float tent. It was a home version. I bought it and put it in my home. I didn't think of anything about the secondary effects of it. Floating, if you don't know, salt is very corrosive. So, and again, with that much salt that you're putting in the tank, the salt gets into the air. It's going to get into the floors, it's going to get into the walls. It destroyed the room that I put it in. The float tank did, but it was nice because I had this thing in my home and I could just do it regularly. And a lot of times I wouldn't even set a timer. I'd just get in and say, "Oh, my body's going to tell me when it's time to get out." And the universe would kind of give me what you needed. Sometimes I just needed to relax and turn my nervous system off. Other times I needed, spiritual guidance or knowledge that would, kind of change my life and move me on. And other times, I just wanted to play a little better golf game because I'd be going out golfing with the guys, right? And I wanted to score a little bit better. So I even floated all night long in a float tank once. We had a rough day at work, and we were going to go out to the bar afterwards and kind of drink it off. And I said, let me go into the float tank first. And I didn't set a timer. And I woke up the next morning and I didn't know what planet I was on. I was so relaxed. So you can sleep in these things. At my float center, again, we'll let you dictate how much time you want to do in a center. We've had people try to spend the night. I don't think everybody's fully made it, but yeah, I encourage people, do what you feel is a calling. I kind of wrote my bridge. Wrote my book as a bridge. We were talking about this the other day. I kind of anchor each chapter in a quote by a famous person, Einstein or somebody else that we would recognize in this 3D world to help people realize. And I also go into a lot of the history of the cultures and even cite Bible verses and stuff out of the Quran and other religions where people have done interdimensional travels, talk to the burning bush and this and that. It's historically, it's all been there. Like I said, it's kind of been suppressed and nobody really talks about it, but it isn't weird, right? You shouldn't look at it as weird. It should look as a natural thing to be able to interdimensionally travel and leave this 3D world and go elsewhere. And of course, I talk about multiple dimensions. I think I go up to 10 or 12 dimensions. There's not a lot of science behind this, so it's hard to find a lot of backing. But again, I'm a feeler, so I kind of feel with what I'm told, and I've visited a bunch, and each one kind of has a different purpose, and there's different beings that kind of hang out. Some have physical forms, some have light forms, and so you kind of get what you need when you go on these travels. And so, but yeah, I try to anchor the book. I view myself as a bridge. Again, I was a mainstreamer, and I kind of sit at the bridge, and I'm trying to wave my hands, tell the mainstreamers, hey, I'm happy to walk you across the bridge over to this other side to see what's over there. I'm not going to, I'll ask questions and give you help and guidance. But again, I think it's your own kind of journey, and I'm not going to pressure. I kind of meet people where they're at. And again, the goal is to, elevate the vibration of the population of the earth so that we can kind of elevate the planet and all kind of live in that 5D dimension. So yeah, I've got 2 websites for my float centers, and then I've got a website for my books. It's veilwalkerlearning.com, which is up on the screen. Like I said, if you want to get more in float tanks, I wrote that book. If you EODES, it talks about past life regression in a float tank, and it's all yourself. Like I said, I did a hypnosis with a professional, but I wrote the book so that you can kind of do it all yourself when you get into a float tank. And then I kind of, in the book, I talk about what a Veilwalker is. And
yeah. So I want to talk about that. What is a Veilwalker?
So it's basically somebody who sees beyond the 3D. And kind of knows that there's more beyond this 3D world. And like I said, it's kind of a natural thing. I think most people approach it when they read it and see it and go, like, even me as a kid, I'm like, I thought I knew there was more out there, but I remember getting thrown out of church and having other bad experiences that I was like, oh, I you don't want to talk about that with other people. But I always kind of knew there was more. I felt there was more. Even in the military, I felt like a square peg in a round hole, right? I followed all the rules and everything that they asked me to do. But at the end of the day, I was like, I'm not really sure this is my path. So I tried to approach it from that, as any mainstreamer that's kind of right on the edge and they're not really sure what's going on, but they feel a calling. They feel they see little idiosyncrasies in the world around them, a lot of numerology. And like I was on the road to visit my mother for Easter the other day, and my and of course I go there all the time, so I kind of know my route. But my GPS just all of a sudden acted up and said, you need to get off. And I was like, what's this saying about? But I'm like, okay, maybe there's traffic ahead. So I got off the road, and it took me to this little podunk town. But it was also right at the point where I was starting to get real frustrated with the drivers around me. And I look at it now, again, everything's a sign. I may have had a traffic accident coming up down the road or something. The universe intervened and had my GPS take me off the road or take me off my route and put me on a different route. So, little things like that happen. And a lot of us we scratch our head and say, why did that happen? How come I can't repeat it? But to me, that's the universe talking to you. We just have to listen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that you have a Veilwalker manifesto. So I was reading some of it before you came on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, it's not very long. I think I put it right in the beginning of the book. And
yeah, it's right in the beginning.
I've bought lots of books before on my journey. And a lot of times, I get into the first 10 pages. I'm like, oh, this isn't for me. And so I kind of put it on the shelf. And I always wish people kind of spell out who the book is for. So the Veilwalker Manifesto starts right in the beginning. And it says it's one who dares to cross between worlds, who walks the edge where the seen and unseen meet, who remembers the veil is not a wall, but a doorway. A Veilwalker is an interdimensional travel, venturing beyond time and space into realms of truth and vision. A healer, mending wounds within self. The lineage, humanity and earth. A bridge, carrying wisdom from beyond the veil back into the 3D world. A citizen of the cosmos, standing not only as a child of earth, but as akin to the stars. To be a Veilwalker is to accept a calling, to awaken when the world slumbers, to choose love when fear is louder, to serve when service is costly, to remember when forgetting is easier. The path is not for the curious alone. It is for the seekers who have felt the veil brush against them in dreams. It is for the ones who see synchronicities and know they are messages. It is for those who hear the whisper, there is more. The Veilwalker's journey is not easy. It will challenge, break, and remake you. It will test your courage, your faith, and your willingness to serve. But it will also awaken you to who you truly are. Source walking in human form. This book is not just a guide. It's initiation, a compassion for those who are ready to step into their role. The veil awaits. The journey continues. The invitation is now.
Beautiful. So with that said, tell us about the book. What did you learn? What things did you were like, oh my God, people have to know about this? Tell us about all that.
Like I said, for me, it was a lot about the dimensions and where entities reside and why they reside there, and the purposes of these various entities. If you wanted to heal, for instance, there's a dimension and beings that you can interact with that are going to help heal you, and I have a script for that'll help you guide you to that.
Okay.
So I'll just pull one out here.
So you're saying the script is actually in the book?
Yes, there's scribbles in the book.
Okay, got it.
In the book, and so this is for like a Galactic Federation journey, right? And so these are symbols that if you meditate, visualize these symbols, as it'll kind of what the collective recognizes, and the collective will jump into your journey. I give a lot of other sacred symbols. There's a lot of the book is a little bit more expensive than your most because it's all color. But I think it's important for the visualization that people see the colors and are able to look at the flower of life or Metatron's cube, because that's part of the script. And again, I talk about tools too, lighting incense, using gems, being in a comfortable space. I call it forest bathing, but I find going off on a hike in nature and sitting behind a tree is another good way to do it. But to me, the best way I found is floating, because even sitting behind a tree, it's kind of nice, but then a butterfly is going to land on my knee and I'm going to start to interact with the butterfly and not so much the interdimensional beings around me. Like I said, I wish I was more talented that I could just do this on my own. And there's some people out there that are, right? That's kind of when people ask me, well, what do you think about Jesus or Buddha? I'm like, they're ascended masters and they were more evolved than the rest of us. And but yeah, there I talk about all the Ds, the 12 dimensions and what they do. And that's something that was all kind of channeled to me because I didn't really know it. Obviously, I knew about the third D and I'd heard about the 5D, but I really didn't know the differences between all the different dimensions. And
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, there's kind of a lot there. We could probably go on all night, but if you had a question about a specific one, I'm
Well,
happy
just
to.
like a summary, like I know 5D is about becoming love and all about love, and we are usually, I correct me if I'm wrong, we're physical, right? We can touch in whatever. So, but once we get past the 5D to the 60 and 7D, is it that it's light beings, right?
There's light beings. There's also physical beings. I mean, the
Okay,
Galactic Federation's up there. I think they're in one of the dimensions as well. So we were kind of talking the other day that they can all see downwards. So if somebody's in the 5D, they can see the 3D, but we can't see upwards. There was an
right.
old book out and a movie was done on the Celestine Prophecy. And when I first saw it, I was kind of scratching my head because I didn't really understand it. But then after I started understanding all the dimensions, there's a portion of the book where the Peruvian army's kind of chasing them, and they seem like they're cornered, and they all just kind of disappear. And I'm like, what's going on there? That doesn't make any sense when I saw it, without this metaphysical belief behind it. But they basically elevated the 5D, and the army folks weren't able to see them, and they were able to kind of hide. And so that's also, our loved ones, ghosts and unicorns and all these mystical creatures that we're told about. They hang out in the fourth D as well. I go to a fairy garden all the time, and I'd love to say that I saw fairies all the time, but I don't. The friend I go with a lot, she sees them a lot more than I do. But then I think you said you've seen them. They're little lights, little spheres.
On video,
On video,
not like with my eyes.
Right. You see all these videos of Bigfoot and stuff like that too, and you'll see a lot of spheres associated with that as well. And again, I think Bigfoot operates on that fourth dimensional, and he's able to he's a Veilwalker. He goes back and forth between the veils,
yes,
which is why there's no physical evidence of why it's hard to find them, and they reveal themselves to the people who are kind of know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, but I get specifics of a lot. I think I'm a starseed. That's not really my area of expertise, but I've got friends that are really into this numerology and your birth sign and all that stuff. So every time I do one of these past life journeys or one of these interdimensional travels, it's almost like I'm meeting old friends, which and I know a lot of you probably rolling your eyes right now. And part of the book talks about that. There's a whole integration thing of, how to get by in the 3D world with these thoughts. And the biggest thing is finding your community. And if you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, you're probably with the right people. So you've kind of found your community. You just need to learn to let go. You don't have these conversations because it's healthy. But you got to be careful where you do it too. If you're just, my friends and family think I'm off my rocker a lot of times, right? I just kind of shrug my shoulders. And like I said, I try to meet people where they're at. There's no judgment on my part. It is what it is. And when they're ready to listen or awaken, I'm there for them, but they'll do it on their own time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So in the book, other than talking about the dimensions, was there anything else that if you look at the chapters, are you kind of, if you can just summarize through the chapters, like this is about this is about that.
Yeah, well, I think the chapters are in that I know you brought up that visualization before. They're right up front here, but let me get to my chapters here. So chapter 1, we talk about the nature of the cosmos. Chapter 2, we talk about general tools and techniques for travel. Chapter 3, we talk about protection, grounding, and safety. Chapter 4, we talk about working with the journey scripts. Chapter 5, I try to take people on their first journeys, which is more of just a general trip to let you know where you need to go. And then chapter 6 is kind of deeper journeys with a little bit more intention behind them. Chapter 7 is healing self, lineage, and the collective. Chapter 8 is about past life journeys. Chapter 9 is journeys with the Galactic Federation. Chapter 10 is collective journeys. If you and they're always more powerful if you can go with a group. Chapter 11 is journeys with the councils of light, which again don't have physical form. Journeys with earth councils is chapter 12. Journeys with star councils is chapter 13. And then it also goes to the differences and explains what each one of these councils is. Now, the book per se isn't about them. I mean, I kind of give a general overview to everybody so you can understand who they are and why they're interacting with you and where their strengths are at. Chapter 14 is integration of the journey, again, which we talked about a little bit. Chapter 15 is challenges and growth. Chapter 16 is supporting the Earth's transition, trying to elevate the world around us. And the biggest thing is chapter 17, free will, service, and the rewards of the path. Why even take the time to do this is kind of what that talks about. And then 18 is advanced journeys and multidimensional exploration. And chapter 19 is closing thoughts and gratitude. Then I have some appendices and resources, and then just an invitation to awaken is at the end of the book. It's about 335 pages total. Like I said, when I first started out writing it, I didn't know how long it was going to be or my first book is only like maybe 100 pages. So when this one turned out to be so big, I was like, wow, what's going on? But it was an important message to get out there, and I'd finish something and then I'd go back and read it and be like, I don't fully understand it. So I tried to write it in layman's terms to give everybody a little summary or some background so that somebody's just not throwing out a term what a light being is. And I don't put that in context. So I have some people that have read it that are kind of advanced and said, well, it's a nice read. It's an easy read, but it's kind of basic. And it's designed to be basic. It's designed to be for someone like me who's just kind of waking up and realizing there's more out there, and how to take that to the next level and do something with it.
So as the conversation was going on, you did mention med beds, and there could be some people who are listening who don't know what is a med bed. So explain to them what is a med bed and who is the Galactic Federation.
So, and like I said, a lot of this is conjecture and feeling. So, and everybody's got a little different variation. But, life is about, at least 3D life is about duality. There's good and there's bad. And there's been this entity that's kind of hijacked the Earth on the bad, which is kind of, everybody kind of knows what it is to be living on this Earth. And then there's the Galactic Federation, which is another group of entities that the bad together as one were too powerful for them. So they had to kind of team up, and they kind of watch Earth from afar and kind of keep it from getting too bad here and make sure that, free will is honored. I mean, there's some, and it's interesting, people, it's a lot like Star Trek. And some people said actually the Gene Roddenberry that wrote Star Trek channeled a lot of the stuff that he talked about that. And so the Galactic Federation is here, but we have to make our own decisions. They're not going to help us, but they're just kind of overshadowing us. But they have a lot of technologies, including a med bed. And a med bed, like I said, I took this journey with Pete and Roxy, and we just went up to this spaceship for the Galactic Federation, and they had these beds. They just look like hospital beds. Mine had like a cage around it, so it was like a bed with a barrier around it, and you just got in the middle of it, and then it used all kinds of energies to kind of heal you. They have different protocols on these med beds, but you'll see lots of stories out there in the internet of people who have cancer and cancer disappeared and all this miraculous stuff. So med beds are kind of an amazing thing. We're probably not very far off on Earth from having them, but and I hope that that's the case. Like I said, I think Big Pharma is kind of hijacked us a lot, and pills, have their purpose and everything, but I think we can all kind of do it naturally. So I don't mean to badmouth Big Pharma, but you should have holistic healing without all the side effects and that do well for people. And that's kind of what a med bed is. Like I said, I think there's Elon Musk will probably be the first that kind of creates a med bed for all of us that we can start to go in. And I know Europe is more in touch with this holistic health stuff than we are in the States. They've got all kinds of energy sources and frequencies and life wave patches and stuff like that we're just realizing here in the States. But technology is all these higher entities view technology as a good thing, and they kind of leverage it to make them better. I wanted to call them human beings, but better entities, physically, mentally, and spiritually, because they realize, just like us, that they're imperfect as well. So again, I've got a chapter that talks a little bit more about it. I can go in and read that more if you want a more detailed answer. And again, Pete and Roxy website that we referenced before, they take people on these medbed journeys all the time. And I think there's other folks out there that will also take people on medbed journeys and trips. But it's amazing. And like I said, I wasn't sure that I fully believed in it until I went on this journey with Pete and Roxy and experienced it for myself. I'm one of those people that again, I'm kind of dense and I don't like subtle, so I kind of have to kind of experience it all myself to go further and further and further, and that's exactly what happened with me. So I encourage everybody to kind of try it.
So what did the people look like when you were in the Galactic Federation? Were you able to see the beings that were there? Did they look like humans or what?
They were all different entities. I mean, they didn't look like humans. Some looked like humans. Some were other races. I don't. When I was there, it was more of a collective feeling that they were all kind of on my side, and it wasn't a looking everybody eye to eye and having a conversation. It was like, oh, I'm so glad you're here. Let me help. And I knew they were there. Some of them, again, didn't even have bodies. They were just light beings. But it was all peaceful, and they were all together. And that's kind of, what this federation has done is kind of, again, that they're fighting the good fight, and they've kind of. My guides are telling me the tides have kind of turned, that the world's going to get a little bit better, and it's just because, again, it was over time. It took the Galactic Federation time, and with them and their partners to kind of put us in a good space and help humanity kind of evolve and awaken, and that's why more people are waking up. That's why I'd never heard that term before, but you're going to hear it a little bit more in the mainstream, and we got astronauts going around the dark side of the moon right now. I'm sure NASA's not going to tell us, but they'll probably bump into a bunch of aliens back there on the dark side that have been back there for a while. Yeah. But everybody's starting to awaken, and the Earth needs it. The cosmos needs it. An awakened cosmos is a happier, healthier cosmos. Love is a beautiful thing, and oneness is a beautiful thing. And to answer your question specifically, when I was doing the med beds, it was just oneness. I just felt oneness with every entity that I was in there with. They took their time and effort to come meet me because they knew I was coming, and ensure that I had a good experience and a good journey. And I was grateful for all of that.
How did it feel like it was close to Earth, or did it feel like it was like another dimension, or what feel did it have?
It felt like it was. I think it was in the fifth dimension, if I had to guess, maybe the fourth dimension. But I didn't think it was too far from Earth. Although time is relevant once you start doing interdimensional travel. There is really no time, so you could travel to the ends of the universe, and it would feel like 5 seconds. Because again, time's a 3D tool that we use or that we relate to, but they don't feel far. I mean, I still feel they're just right around the corner watching us. They're far enough away that we can't see them, and they do that on purpose because, like I said, free will is an important thing. When people are ready, they'll introduce themselves to everybody, but they're not going to force themselves on you. They want you to, when the timing is right, the timing is right. Well, I forget the Star Trek motto is something to not interfere, right? And that's kind of where these guys are at. They don't want to interfere, but they also, the reason why humans are important is I hear that a lot of the Galactic Federation, that is our DNA. They kind of took us and took DNA from each and every one of them, including the bad ones, and kind of rolled everything together and here we are in human form, and the goal was to see if we could create creatures that can live amongst themselves with all of our DNA, then there's hope for all of us. So, and we're kind of the experiment, and that's why everybody's paying so much attention to us and why we're so important in this whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're also creators, and some of the ETs are not, and the ones that are abusing us are the ones that don't have the ability that we do. So we're very powerful. So a question I had for you is, in your floats, whenever you were getting information, did it feel like it was always like God / source, or were there ever any galactic beings involved in the conversation?
Yeah, I would have interactions with entities. I remember one float early on that I was floating, and they all looked like clouds, and I just felt like I was kind of floating in the sky, and each cloud had some sort of an awareness, and the more I focused on the cloud, the more I felt the cloud focused on me, and the cloud and me would come real close together, almost face to face. It felt like, and those clouds were beings, and some beings were super advanced and knew exactly who I was and what I was. Other beings were like a space dog. They're just kind of looking at you going, wow, that's weird. That's funny. And so there was no rhyme or reason. It was all seemed kind of random to me at the time, but each cloud had an awareness to it, and you could, by just focusing on it, once you came across it, you could have some interactions, and again, it wasn't very profound that I was getting these actual, but in my head I'd have a message of what we were talking about. And again, some messages were more profound than others. Others were just like, oh, you're interesting. Where are you from? What's going on there? Right. So yeah, it's not always going to be source. To me, I've had a few with source. I think floating kind of gives you what you need though, right? If you're really off track and you're really having a tough time, source is going to come through and say, hey, I'm here for you. If you just need a slight nudge, you might just bump into a space dog who's gonna, lick your face and say, "Hey, I'm here for you whenever you're ready." So I have dogs, by the way. They've been good and quiet, but if you hear any barking, I apologize to everybody.
Okay, no worries. So did you? Oh God, I had a really good question and it left me. When you are. It had to do with talking to source, but I can't remember right now what it was.
Well, I think source wants us to do this. I get a lot of people that I talk to that are very religious, and they're like, "Oh, it's counter to everything." You're going to see one of my dogs here. He wants to come up and say hi. So,
yeah.
But I get a lot of people that say you're going against source, and I'm like, I don't think I am.
What?
I'm in alignment with source, right? He wants us to travel. He wants us to realize that he's there, and every dimension that we travel further, we get kind of closer and closer to source. So it's kind of it's a good thing. And like I said, in the book, I cite lots of religions used to use this as a practice to do all this stuff, especially the Hindus and the Buddhists and stuff like that. So yeah, source is in alignment with all of this. I don't know if that was your question. I was kind of foreleading it a little bit. Hey, get down.
Yeah, no, that wasn't it, but I can't remember. I mean, all that comes to mind is there are a lot of entities out there, good and bad. And so, but you did mention you have a protection section in the book. So I imagine that's something that you do before intention. Okay, I remember now.
Right.
Do you put any intention before starting? Do you program your matrix before you go into these floats, or you just let whatever come?
So I always try to have an intention, but I try to keep the intention very broad. It's not like, hey, what are the lottery number winners going to be for this weekend's lottery, right? Because universe is probably not going to give you that because you don't really need that. We're getting off on a tangent, but most people are more unhappy after they win the lottery than winning it. But so I set, a very broad intention of, hey, give me what I need or help me realize what I need. Intention and expectations get confused a lot by people. So I always try to have people, don't have an expectation going into it because you're probably going to be disappointed because what you think you need is not what the universe realizes you need. So broad intention, don't limit yourself. I have a protection chapter in the book and, I alluded to it, it's free will. As humans, we have free will. If we're ever uncomfortable in any one of these experiences, you can just say, nope, I'm done. I don't want to talk to you anymore. If you think you're interacting with a bad entity, when I did my plant medicine, I felt first couple ceremonies, I felt the need to go down into the darkness. And that's where I felt the healing needed to happen. And it wasn't fun. It wasn't comfortable. I wanted to quit after about 3 days. And the shaman pulled me aside and said, I want you to intentionally go into light this time. Don't go into the darkness. If you feel that pull, say, no, I'm not going down. And I did exactly what he said. And it was the most beautiful experience I had. That's why, they brought me to the collective consciousness and said, ask anything you want. I was in such awe that I said, I'm good. I don't need to ask any more questions. So it's all free will. And it was, on these plant journeys, you're kind of driving yourself too. So yeah, I do talk about protections, and of course, afterwards, you want to make sure you close the space, and we give tips and tools of how to do that too, so you're not bringing back entities with you that would, embed in dogs or others. I'm no expert in any of that stuff. I don't understand how all that works, but I've seen some pretty convincing videos out there of people that looks like that they've got some sort of entity inside of them that shouldn't be there. So, and that's not what's going to happen again, especially if you say, nope, my body's closed, you're not coming in, type thing. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. I think that people should definitely just, put the intention at least that it will be only with the beings of love and light, And also, if you vibrate high, if you're a high vibrational person, those entities can't see you.
Right.
It's just like the light beings can see us, but we can't see them, right? When
Right.
you're vibrating really high, the lower level, dense level can't see the fast vibration. So that's really the answer to everything is vibrate high and you are safe.
Right. Right. So, and I think floating helps increase everybody's vibration. I also have this thing called acoustical sound bed in both of my float centers. I don't know if anybody's done that. Mine's in harmony, but you just lay on it. For people who don't like to get wet or don't want to get in the water, you can just lay on an acoustical sound bed and it'll vibrate with special frequencies. And a lot of times you can pick what frequencies you want, but it'll elevate your vibration. You'll be having a bad day prior to getting on the bed and coming off the bed. The universe kind of likes everybody with a high vibration,
Yeah.
Lights will turn. There's the in harmony there is in the center. And I've got this Lucia light thing that's off to the right of it as well that kind of stimulates your pineal gland and kind of helps. And a lot of times I'll do the Lucia light before I float, just kind of ensure. I try to use as many tools as I can to ensure that I have the best experience and that I'm making the most out of my time. So,
yeah, and you have other healing modalities as well in your center.
exactly.
I don't know if you want to talk about those just so people know if they can, use. I know you have red light therapy as well.
Red light, hydrogen therapy, you just saw there. Again, we talked about the acoustical sound. I have this thing called a magnetic resonance therapy. It's a chair there it is right there. You just kind of sit into it and it creates vibrational waves around you. All these, I consider myself or my center as a holistic wellness center, not just about floating. Although
Right.
I put float in the title of all of them because at the end of the day, people are like, oh, you got so much stuff. I don't know where to start. I'm like, let's start with the float because to me, you don't really need to know what you're going after in a float. Like I said, the universe is going to guide you. If it's more physical in nature, then you're just going to feel better afterwards. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of physical pain, though, is generated through trauma that we're just storing in our bodies, right? There's a good book out, The Body Keeps Score. And wherever you're storing stuff in your body, it's going to slowly wear down those organs and create pain. And so the solution to solving that is not pain stuff, it's trauma release. And again, most doctors aren't going to be able to tell you that. Again, a lot of these, your fibromyalgias, your Lyme diseases,
Yep.
a lot of
Yep.
these autoimmune stuff, they all present differently to people. And again, I'm no doctor, so I'm just kind of speaking, throwing it out there. But I think it's all trauma-based stuff that people are storing from past lives, and it's not this life. I mean, you'll have people. Some people legitimately did have ticks on them or whatnot, but others are like, I don't think I ever came in contact with a tick, so how can I have Lyme disease? And it's like from a past life, and it presents differently. So I encourage anybody that's got one of these autoimmunes that's kind of been chasing it all their life and how to manage it is to find a holistic wellness center and try everything. We're all different. One size does not fit all. I've met a few people that don't like floating, but not many. And normally it's like you, they tried it once and it was weird and awkward and they got salt in their ears or had to do their hair afterwards and really didn't like it. And then I asked the question, well, how many times did you do it? Oh, I only did it once. And I was supposed to go in for an hour, but I left after 30 minutes, right? There's always some sort of excuse. I'm like, well, you didn't give yourself time enough to get in there and really get relaxed and have your nervous system reset on you. Because to me, at the end of the day, that's what floating is a nervous system reset. And our nervous system is how we interact with this 3D world. So like I said, I've got a lot of stuff and everything in my centers is stuff that's worked for me. I'm not a traditional business owner. I couldn't sell something to somebody if in the back of my mind, I didn't think that it worked. Right. But I always preface it, just because it worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you, which is why, again, I throw out options and encourage people to, shop around, find the right place. So most float centers are great. Some maybe not so great. And so if you try it once and you didn't have a good experience, maybe go to a different location and try it again. Don't just completely write it off. But and I encourage everybody to float on or about their birthdays. I try to float on or about my birthday, and I set my intention to go back to my earliest childhood memories. And I believe in pre-birth memories. And, all this was kind of spelled out to us. We knew what we were getting ourselves into before we were born, our soul contracts and everything else. And then we doctor slaps us on the butt and it's all downhill from there and we forget everything. So I keep trying to go back and I want to have those memories so I can kind of understand why it was that I put myself through this. And each year, I mean, I've never gone back to pre-birth, but each year I do get back further and further and further. And there's a lot of trauma that happens to us as kids that we don't know how to process it. Like I remember one little story or visualization I got. I'm standing next to my mother's leg at the stove and I'm reaching up towards what I only assume is a hot stove. And she sees me and says, no, and slaps my hand. And I go running off to my room thinking my mother didn't love me type thing. And I carried that with me for like 50 years. And again, when I saw that in a float tank, I'm like, oh, it's in fact that she did love me and didn't want me to burn my hand is why she reacted the way she did. But I just didn't know how to process it. So little things like that, I think, happen to us all the time. And again, I'm no professional or doctor, but I'm sure they can tell you that's kind of par for the course.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I can't believe time has flown by. I am so grateful and just that you came in such short notice, but I'm sure it was meant to be. I want to tell everybody to please check out your book, especially if you're new to all of this stuff, of the galactic stuff, of the dimension stuff. Like this sounds like it's the perfect book to start, moving from that 3D to the 5D, of that bridge that we talked about. So Chris, thank you so much for coming and being here with us. And thank you for your service to humanity. It really is obvious that that's why you're doing this. And I'm just so grateful that to have met you and to just be grateful and not grateful that your center is close to me. And thank you. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me on. And if anything I said resonated with anybody and you have questions, feel free to reach out. They're going to post my contact information. So I'm here to help all. Like I said, no judgment on my part. There's no stupid question. And I'll do my best that I can to meet you where you're at.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Hope to see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.